Hello, and welcome to another NABBW Financial Podcast. I'm here with Pamela J. Sams to discuss our May topic, cryptocurrency basics, what's all the fuss about? Welcome to our Zoom call. We're so glad you've joined us for this join us live for this complex, timely, and not well understood topic. During our chat tonight, we'll be discussing the basics of cryptocurrency or digital assets. I'm willing to guess that we've all heard something about its extreme volatility on the news, especially after Elon Musk's appearance on Saturday Night Live earlier this month and the wild ride that has ensued. Cryptocurrency isn't a totally new thing. Bitcoin, one of the more well-known coins, has been around since 2009, and Pam will be giving us a bit of a history lesson on cryptocurrency in a few minutes. But if you're like most of us, you really don't know what cryptocurrency is, and not knowing can be dangerous. I recently read that engineers at the cyber exposure firm Tenable estimate that people were scammed out of as much as $10 million after Musk's SNL appearance, and many of these scams happened because celebrity social media accounts, especially Twitter, were hacked. Actually, after I announced today's podcast topic, an old college friend of mine Facebooked me, strongly suggesting that cryptocurrency is not anything baby boomers ought to be getting involved with, way too speculative, and advising me not to hold such a podcast. I told him to calm down. Pam and I are not here tonight to sell anything but knowledge. Personally, and we were giving it away free, by the way. Personally, I believe that being forewarned is forearmed. So we're here tonight to discuss the basics of cryptocurrency and to understand the pros and cons. Afterward, you'll know a bit more about what people are talking about. You'll be able to have intelligent conversations with your kids and your friends when the topic comes up, and hopefully you'll avoid being scammed. Tonight, we'll be covering things like the terms used. There's a lot of different terms that I had no idea what they meant, like blockchain. We'll find out what cryptocurrency is, why there are so many types of coins and whether they're all equivalent. Is this a legal trade? Is it safe? How it came to be, how speculative it is, what an investor needs to watch out for, and under what circumstances would it ever make sense to invest. But before we delve into the actual questions I'll be asking Pam tonight, let me tell you a bit about who we are. I'm Ann Holmes, your moderator and the Boomer-in-Chief of the National Association of Baby Boomer Women, an organization dedicated to educating and empowering women at midlife and beyond. And with me to answer our questions is Pamela J. Sams, CRPC, MBA, BFA. Sam is an expert in personal finance, president of Jackson Sams Wealth Strategies in Herndon, Virginia, and a monthly guest who covers important information related to money and financial planning. She's a chartered retirement planning counselor and NABBW's retirement planning associate. Now, before we can launch into tonight's discussion, I need to play a quick audio clip just to keep us legal.
Securities offered through Securities America Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Securities America Advisors Incorporated, a SEC registered investment advisory firm. Pamela Sams, investment advisor representative. Jackson Sams Wealth Strategies, Securities America Incorporated, and all other entities named are separate entities.
All right. Thanks for joining us again tonight, Pam.
Thanks for having me once again, Ann. And I know this is probably one of those topics similar to what your friend was saying, is that most people are really curious about it, but also scared. And you probably haven't had any or looked at the news or opened up a podcast or anything and have not heard about cryptocurrency lately, especially like you said, in light of a lot of things that have been going on
Right.
with the volatility, with celebs that are toting or not toting crypto. So it'll be an interesting wild ride as well tonight to talk a little bit about what it's all about.
Yes, and some news that I saw today, I think it was on the Washington Post, said that the White House is starting to look into it, so try to make it, I think, a safer situation for people. So let's dig right into our discussion, Pam, because I promised people a minute ago that it really makes sense for us to begin tonight's discussion by sharing a brief history of cryptocurrency, especially because so many of us are pretty fuzzy about the topic unless we've had the chance to study it as you have. And I really didn't study it at all until I started getting ready for this call. But it makes me think of that famous quote, which I found out is written by Alexander Pope in an essay on criticism, which he wrote way back in the early 1700s. But we are familiar with the phrase, a little learning is a dangerous thing. And he went on to say, drink deep or taste not the Pierian spring. There, shallow draughts intoxicate the brain, and drinking largely sobers us again. In other words, he was saying it's probably better to either be totally ignorant on a topic or to have studied and mastered it. Much better than to have only partial knowledge.
Yeah,
So,
I think that is with dabbling in anything, you have to, at least know as much if you're going to be involved with cryptocurrency. But just kind of a brief history of it, just like the advent of what we call now the internet, that was a long time ago, when the government had came out with ways to communicate via computer to computer. Same thing with cryptocurrency. It's nothing new. I mean, we've kind of, the popularity of it probably in 2009, but it actually goes way back to, even 1970s, where I think it was an economist or, a scientist, and it was more, I think it was called DigiCash or eCash in the 70s and 80s. So it has definitely been experimented before. It became more of a main topic somewhere around 2008, actually right after the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto. And that's one of the things, just by learning this all about cryptocurrency, no one knows if it's actually an actual person or it's an entity or that sort of thing. But it's
it's the name
Satoshi,
that we're given for
yeah, that's what the name we're given
right.
for. But to put out a white paper called basically, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, peer-to-peer type of banking. So that's where the precipice of cryptocurrency really started, way back in 70s, 80s with cryptography. That's kind of how most of it is. The underlying, the underworkings of cryptocurrency is cryptography, and that started in the 70s and 80s, and then just recently within the 2000s, Bitcoin came into play.
Exactly. I didn't know that much what you're talking about, but I did read that it got a start, as you said, in the 70s and 80s with what they called smart cards, which were actually created to allow long haul truckers to buy fuel for their trucks without having to actually carry cash, which apparently the concept of it was that it would be extra convenient, especially if you're having to, as a long haul trucker, you might have to buy fuel in the middle of the night. So it sounds like such an innocent concept that has really, really morphed into something way different than that. So please, is there more that you can tell us about the official history of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the main history of it. Out of that, I mean, the whole precipice was to really be able to deal with more of a digital currency or digital assets to maybe decentralize the process. Like you said, if truckers needed to go from A to B without having, actual cash, I think, historically, and also, if you were to think about the future, we've all seen, sci-fi movies or things like that, where, we're in a cashless society. And I think, just kind of the inner workings of how digital currency works and cryptocurrency, that's kind of where the future is moving to eventually, to see if we can become more of a cashless society where we don't have to, as we see it now, with debit cards, how many times do you actually deal with physical cash? A lot of it's already through either credit cards or digital banking or online banking. We get our paychecks deposited. We don't see any cash unless you go to an ATM and you get out cash. Most of our transactions are already more electronic based. So, having the cryptocurrency, which is, I would not say the same thing, but that's the precipice of how do we deal with being able to have the workings of a cashless society, if that's what we're moving towards.
Yeah, this cashless is my whole life I think is cashless because I'll tell you this funny story. Since the last year where we weren't going out places because of
Mhm.
um, we started having someone come to our house to cut our hair, and
Mhm.
she normally works in a salon, but she has a number of clients that wanted her to come to their homes. And so we have to give her cash. And
Mhm.
she came last week to cut both of, I've started having her do it too, because it's just easier to have both of us get haircuts at the same time. But we're having this discussion, myself and Steve, my husband, is, do you have the money that we need to give her? Because we have become so cashless as a couple
Mhm.
that the concept of having enough, I mean, $40 to get two haircuts was, so,
Mhm.
well, we had it, but it was kind of like we had to have this discussion of, do we actually have that much cash in our pockets? So,
Mhm.
so
Exactly. So that's, kind of what the history behind really trying to go to more of a digital base or digital assets. And the first part of that, of course, being, your debit cards, your electronic banking, and then
mhm.
out of that really evolving into probably more digital assets, which are cryptocurrency type environment.
Okay. So we have talked about Bitcoin, and you can
Mhm.
give us a little bit of more example about exactly what Bitcoin is, but Bitcoin is not the only cryptocurrency.
No, that's, when we had talked about Satoshi Nakamoto, that's what was the one of the first cryptocurrencies, which was Bitcoin, which is, if you think about digital currency, it's more decentralized without having a central bank or any central administrator involved, without any intermediary. So it's
Mhm.
more, when he came out with the white paper, or the entity came out with the white
Right.
paper, a peer-to-peer type of system. That's where Bitcoin was born out of that. And most of it was because of the financial crisis in 2008. We saw what happened with the banking system during that time period. Banks, that didn't survive, or banks
Mhm.
that needed to be bailed out, by the government. You know, this white paper was explaining, what if we could have something that was decentralized from the banking system, where it's a peer-to-peer. We don't have to deal with all of the intermediaries in that, and we can still be able to, provide resources from a digital standpoint, more the digital currency part. So that's how Bitcoin was born um, out of the financial crisis in
Mhm.
2008, to really be kind of that peer-to-peer network of digital currency without those intermediaries.
All right. Um, Now, another term that I haven't figured out totally what it is yet, Pam. So I'm asking you this, but I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
I keep reading about blockchain. So what is blockchain?
Yeah. Now, blockchain, if you think of the cryptocurrency, blockchain is actually the system of recording the information. So think of it as a digital ledger. So that's what the
Okay.
blockchain, that is the underlying uh, way that Bitcoin works, is through a blockchain technology. Um, Recording the transactions and then the distributions across the entire network of computer systems. That's what blockchain is, as well. So think of it as, and I don't know if you remember, Anne, back in the day, where you may have had kind of these private keys that you would have that would generate um, your passcode every time. If you were in corporate America, you would get one,
Hmm.
and it would generate a different passcode. That's similar to what blockchain works, is that it's a private key that keeps a digital ledger of everything that goes on, and with cryptocurrency. So that's kind of the underlying, think of it as kind of the first layer. And then there's, some other, second layer blockchains and things like that. But, that's probably out of the scope of this particular
Mhm.
call. But just know the underlying way that Bitcoin works is through a blockchain technology, where it's a digital ledger that you're recording all of the transactions, making sure that they are not duplicated across that particular network of computers, the computer system.
All right. Okay. I think that I kind of understand that. So,
Mhm.
um, does that mean that from the time when the coin is created, it keeps track of it from that point? So like who buys it, who buys the coins, and then
Yeah, and it works on, you've probably heard of, the digital wallets or
Mhm.
crypto wallets. That's that's basically how you would end up, holding the cryptocurrency is in a crypto wallet or digital wallet. They're basically interchangeable terms, but that's how, you keep track of that. So the thing that one of the disadvantages that people have been discussing with blockchain is how do you prevent any duplication. It's not like a fiat currency, which is, your dollar or your
Mhm.
euro, is
Right.
that once you go spend it, it's accounted for, in an accounting system. How do you do the same thing with cryptocurrency? So, as you explained before with, people hacking or people stealing or those sort of things, that's one of the deterrents that you do have to consider dealing with cryptocurrency, because it's unregulated, at least for now,
Mhm. Right.
on how to prevent the duplication of currency inside of a digital wallet.
Okay. Well, can you explain how it works, or is there more to how it works than what you've just said?
Yeah, that's basically how it works. And these
Okay.
are some things that economists, of course, and scientists, and really have to kind of figure out what the underlying workings is through a blockchain technology. We just have to make sure it's a secure way to deal with the duplication of it, and then also how to protect your digital wallets or your crypto wallets.
Okay. Um, well, I mentioned earlier that just a few minutes ago that there are other digital assets besides Bitcoin. Could we talk about some of the other ones that are out there?
Mhm. There are so many, so many different digital currency or digital assets. They're interchangeable. But if you were to kind of look at it, Bitcoin would be kind of the top line, and then you have Ethereum. You have that. That's for your ETH is the symbol for it. Similar, it actually works on a second layer tier on blockchain. Like I said, out of the scope of this particular call,
Right.
just from the technology standpoint. But it's what we call a global decentralized platform for money, um, with a different kind of application. So it writes code that controls your money. So it works a little bit different than Bitcoin, but it is one of the digital assets that are available. So if you were to think about the cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, um, uh, Ethereum, and then you have Ripple, you have Litecoin. There's so many different ones. You've probably heard of Dogecoin.
Mhm.
That's one of the ones that actually the co-founder of Ethereum had started Dogecoin, and it went all wildfire because you had celebs that were toting it. You had Mark Cuban, and you had a bunch of people talking about it. So that blew up, and that probably was more of a kind of a fad type of, in terms of its actual growth for the longer term. But that
Mhm.
it is out there. But there's probably a dozen more. But if you were to think about the top five, those are the ones that I just disclosed, are the ones that most people will, put their money into, which would be kind of the top three or four cryptocurrencies that are out there.
All right. Now, there's another term that I don't understand, and that is DeFi. What is DeFi?
Mhm. It's just really it's a abbreviation for decentralized financing.
Okay.
So that's basically the whole decentralized banking system. So when you're thinking about DeFi, a lot of economies are trying to bring, because if it works on a peer-to-peer situation, really bringing banking to people who may or may not have had access to a formal banking system. So if you think of, maybe third world countries, or countries that don't have strong banking systems, being able to provide a crypto solution to them would be a DeFi initiative that a lot
Hmm.
of the cryptocurrency founders and also companies are looking at. How do we decentralize financing where everybody is included if we're on a peer-to-peer system as well? Now, of course, with everything, if you're dealing with any governments or economies, it all comes down to regulation, because it's the wild wild west out here, when it comes to cryptocurrency. So how do we wrangle it in to be something that people will take advantage of, but also be safe in order to either invest or take or basically be able to take advantage of. So that's some of the things that people would look at in a DeFi situation, is that how do we bring banking system to the masses in the most efficient manner, um, but then also without so much regulation. I think eventually, and just my opinion, there would be eventually, because you've seen such volatility over the last week, White House getting involved as well, is that eventually there will probably be some regulation in this space as well. But if you're looking at DeFi, the whole premise is how are we able to bring banking, or efficient banking, to the masses? So that's what DeFi would be.
Okay. Now, you talked about third world countries, and I'm certainly all for third world countries um, having access to finances,
Hmm.
because financing is very important for
Hmm.
growth, so
Yeah.
but based on the fact that these are digital assets, does this mean that people can't really actually use any kind of a digital asset unless they have access to the internet?
Um, Possibly, but it's
Okay.
not, because of a lot of, and if you look at some of these countries, I've seen some countries in Africa actually have used to mobile phones
Hmm.
more than, some people in the US would
Yes,
have
I've
access
heard
to.
about that.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So as long as you have a mobile solution, and that would have some connectivity, you're able to, keep a crypto wallet or digital wallet. So that's, that would be part of the DeFi, to figure out, of course, if we were to have access to a decentralized banking system, how would people get access to the digital wallets? And then usually through a mobile solution is what most of them have been looking at.
Okay. Well, I certainly want to get more information about how you actually spend cryptocurrency, um,
Hmm.
because you've talked about these wallets, and I do know
Hmm.
that part of the information that Elon Musk stirred up was because he said that they would no longer accept cryptocurrency for purchasing Teslas. So,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
so
And that was one of the things. I mean, I think he came out and said, yes, we would. And then he came back and
mhm,
said, no. Uh, and merely from and like I said, just based on my opinion, just for the fact that the, the value, it doesn't hold like a value would
mhm,
in a dollar or euro or yen. It's so volatile that, he would be losing money eventually if people were to buy it, and then the value changes, and then vice versa. So that's probably why he's like, okay, maybe that's not a good idea, at least
mhm,
right now,
right.
when things are so volatile. So that's the thing you have to be concerned about as well with cryptocurrency, is that it doesn't hold value like the dollar, or like it's called fiat currencies, which are traditional currencies that countries have. Um, the value system works a lot differently. So over the past week, you probably saw, a 50% drop in Bitcoin
Mhm.
from where it's high and where it is right now. The dollar wouldn't ever drop, by 50% in a short period of time. So that's where a lot of people are concerned about, is how does it hold its value? Yes, some of it may have been a little bit inflated at most, but then how does it hold its value? How do we recoup what we have? Do we continue to stay in? Is it going to, continue down the track um, of volatility? So,
Mhm.
just like any investment, you have to weigh the pros and the cons of holding cryptocurrency.
All right, because certainly the fiat currencies are,
Mhm.
they're backed by the nations, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Treasuries of the nations, and there's
Mhm.
guarantees,
Yes.
uh, and there's none of that at this point with cryptocurrency, as I
No,
understand it.
not at this point. No, and that's the basis of it being that peer to peer and being decentralized. So you're
Mhm.
not in a situation where you do have the backing of like I said, a government system or banking system
Mhm.
that will be able to hold up the value in it. So that's why I was saying before, it's a little bit of the wild wild west that we're working with with
Mhm.
cryptocurrency in that aspect. Is it a good idea, to, like I said, with DeFi, bring banking solutions to the masses? Yes, but how do we do it in the most efficient and safe manner as possible?
All right. Well, now that you've answered my question about how you spend it, how and where do you go to buy cryptocurrency?
Hmm. Yep. And
And what do
again,
you buy it with?
yeah, and what do you buy it with? Exactly. So just like with the disclosure, I'm not recommending anybody go out tomorrow and go buy, cryptocurrency. I really want people to do the research, do the homework before they get involved in the space, because it is volatile. But if you were to buy it, there are platforms. Before there was only a couple of places to buy it. Coinbase. Most people have probably heard that Coinbase recently went public, so
Hmm.
that's probably one of the largest platforms to buy and sell cryptocurrency. Crypto.com recently came out. They have all of the cryptocurrency offerings that are available through that platform. There's actually some other um, uh, investment firms that are offering it as well. I know PayPal had recently started to have a crypto offering through their platform. So there's a few different ways to buy cryptocurrency. Now, what you're doing is basically buying it with fiat dollars
Hmm.
currency. So
Right.
you would exchange your dollars or whatever currency you're working with, and then that's how you would buy it, and then it's stored in that crypto wallet or digital wallet, as I explained to before. And then you basically kind of monitor what the value is, and it will give you, I know with crypto.com, you'll be able to track uh, what the um, what the value is on a day-to-day basis, similar to what you would do with your regular investment portfolio. You'll see kind of the greens and the reds on up and
Hmm.
down days with that. And same thing, if you wanted to sell out of it, you would just, most of them are kind of a click and point type thing. So if you wanted to sell, you basically convert it back to dollars after that from there. So whatever value it is at that particular point in time. That's why a lot of people have been running to safety from Bitcoin, because it has been sliding so much. They're like, hey, let's try to salvage what we can, convert those back into dollars, maybe sit on the sidelines for a little bit, maybe buy a little bit lower,
Hmm.
because it is, like I said, have been fairly overpriced right now. So getting in a little bit lower, just like the philosophy, buy low, sell high. Um, so a lot of times people get back into a dollar situation and then wait on the sidelines and then maybe buy back in after kind of everything is after the shakeout, so to speak, with that. But that's how you would buy and sell cryptocurrency. Several platforms, but do the research on number one, should I buy cryptocurrency? Number two, which platform is best? Some of them have fees involved, and then what those fees are. As you buy those, do you buy it through, because some allow you to use your credit card, some allow you just to use maybe a bank account. A lot of them do require kind of identity verification. I know crypto.com, before you can start buying and trading may require, investor, some questions for investor knowledge, but it also asks for a driver's license just to verify you are who you say you are. And then you're allowed to start buying and trading from that. So just know what you're getting into when you look at cryptocurrency, but then also look at the platforms, evaluate the platforms on what's required, but also what fees they charge for you.
Okay, but I think from what you said earlier, that you would say that the platforms that you would think that the names, the Bitcoin, the Ethereum, those are the bigger ones that you would think would be.
Those are probably the most known, and that, in terms of market capitalization, just like any stock or mutual fund, those tend to be the larger ones, and the ones have had a little bit more of a track record. With that, Dogecoin, like I said, is one of those, kind of, I wouldn't say fly by night, but it became really big because of celebrity endorsements and people on the internet talking about it and all of these sort of things. So you don't want anything that's overly inflated because of situations like that. You want something that's fairly tried and true, or I'm sorry, has a track record, so you can see how it's been performing over time versus, just kind of jumping in and saying, okay, everybody else is doing it, let me buy some of this type of thing. Yeah.
All right. So would you say, if we go back to Star Trek, and the fact that they, lived kind of with this type of currency, which seemed so futuristic when Star Trek first came out. So I don't know which came first, people saying, well, they had it in Star Trek, let's invent that, or which way. But would you say it's a fad, or does it have a future?
Yeah, and I think, just like you're explaining Star Wars, Star Trek, all of those, I think, people kind of see it and it's like, hey, why can't we do that? So, I mean, I think eventually, just like we were just talking about, is that, future has always been, I guess, one of the things to look at is how do we become a cashless society? How do we do it in the most efficient manner? So I think definitely it has a future. Just recently, China has been talking about going to a digital yuan, digital currency. I know lately they've had some issues, and they've been talking about something different. But over the past month and a half, they had been considering maybe going just to digital based currency in China. So that has been one of the discussions on, I don't know, what the U.S. would be doing in that arena, but eventually I think, there would be kind of a track to a cashless society where, we're able to, pay for services. If you would just to think about, recently we have an Amazon Fresh in our area. You go into an Amazon Fresh, if you have an Amazon account, you can go in, pick up items, go out the store, and it's just basically, it'll charge your account with that. You go in, they may scan, certain things, but that's kind of how people, from a futuristic standpoint, how do we deal with not having paper cash with these transactions? So I don't think cryptocurrency is just a fad. I believe there is a future to it. We have to see what form or fashion it would take, though, because as we see as we have seen over the last couple of weeks, there has been so much volatility that, of course, once volatility occurs and people start, losing a lot, then regulation starts. And so we have to kind of see what it looks like in a regulatory environment. Does it stay the same? Because that was the whole premise, is to have more of a peer-to-peer and a decentralized system versus having it regulated. So we have to kind of see what form it will take in the future. But I think that's kind of where things will track, is how do we become a cashless society, either be crypto or just electronic transaction type based. But I think it's here to stay. It's just evolving, just like anything else. So we have to kind of see what it looks like in its futuristic form.
All right, but at this point, I think somebody said to me recently, I don't remember who it was. Somebody said you shouldn't invest more than you can afford to lose. So
correct. Yeah, that's with any investment.
Right.
You want to make sure you do that. And this is the situation where it is very speculative. So only put in what you can afford to lose, and know that it's one of those things that has more volatility than maybe traditional investments. So use it as more of a speculative, that yes, if I gain a lot, then I've made money, or I've made more than I've invested. But also know that if it slides down a lot as well, that it's money that you can afford to lose. You don't want to bet the farm on it, or your retirement dollars
Right.
on something like this, and kind of that get rich quick, because we've seen you've probably read or heard about a lot about Bitcoin millionaires and Dogecoin millionaires, and that's kind of one-off type situations. You want to be smart when you invest in your digital currency. If you decide to do cryptocurrency trading, is that only use the dollars that you can afford to lose.
All right. Well, I have you may have more that you want to say, but at this point, I've got a few questions that people have communicated with me. So let's talk about those. You may have answered some of them to some degree already, but the first one that I received said that she remembers the .com bubble and the real estate bubble, and she wonders whether or not cryptocurrency investment also qualifies as a bubble. I'm not really sure exactly what she means, but I'm thinking that she's asking whether it's too late to consider investing in cryptocurrency, or whether or not such a time that it's too late to invest will come. But maybe I don't understand her.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand. It's just one of those, is at some point, especially during the .com and the real estate bubbles, is that people were like, oh, let's go ahead and take advantage of that, and then all of a sudden the bottom fell out. And it may have been a period where it may have been too late to invest. Cryptocurrency, like I said, when I gave kind of the brief history lesson, is that it is ever evolving, and it's still relatively in its infancy stage. So right now, because of the volatility, it's going through its fits and starts like any other investment. So I don't think it's quite the bubble that the .coms and the real estate. Is just people are trying to understand a little bit better, because of because social media has become quite the force, where everybody can say something at the ready, and then all of a sudden the investment goes down. So I think it is in its infancy, and then it still has room to grow with that. Just make sure you're being smart when you're doing it, because like I said, Bitcoin was overpriced. Now it's sliding back down. Maybe it's in a correction period, versus now it's going to hit the floor type of situation. So I don't consider it to be a bubble. No.
Okay. It kind of reminds me of the internet, which I'm old enough to remember when somebody in grad school said to me, well, we have a modem, and I'm going, what the heck is a modem? And then
Yeah.
if you're like uh, as old as I am, you used to hear those terrible squeaky, squealy tones
Yes.
when the modem started up
Mhm.
before it connected, and and now we just connect to the internet with our phones, and there's none of that modem stuff that we all had to
Yeah,
deal with back then. So
exactly. So just like, those modem and AOL dial-up
right.
days, where you would
Hmm.
hear all those squeaky noises and stuff. So, that just the same thing is an evolution
Hmm.
on what the internet was. Same thing with cryptocurrency. We're still, if you were to think about Bitcoin really just being, pretty much 11 years old, pretty much, it's still, young.
Hmm.
And yeah, all of the different cryptocurrencies and the underlying digital assets that are out there, there's room for investing in it, only if you take precautions and invest smartly in the space. But it does have room to grow, and I don't think it's a bubble at all.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I have one more question from a listener, and then I have a question of my own. So
Mhm.
the question from the listener wants to know if where you would recommend she go if she wants to learn more about the topic.
Mhm. There are a lot of podcasts, publications, investor publication. Investopedia is a really good website. I used to do some writing for them. They put information in really good user-friendly terms, and it's easy to follow. So I would look at Investopedia as well. A lot of the publications, the major publications like Forbes and Wall Street Journal, they have, I think they do have an area where they talk about cryptocurrency as well. So it's really just learning as much as you can about it. It is going to get a little bit geeky in
Hmm.
terms of kind of the blockchain technology and the
Hmm.
underlying technology, because I recently got a certification in digital assets and cryptocurrency. And I had to go through a lot of the modules that just purely talked about the science behind blockchain and
Hmm.
and that sort of thing. So it will get a little geeky if you want to get down to those that level. If you want to just kind of a high overview level of the cryptocurrency, most of the major investment sites will have information on what it is, how does it work briefly, without getting down into the weeds on the technology part. And then, some of the major players, and then really what to evaluate when you're looking at cryptocurrency.
All right, great. Now, when I started reading about cryptocurrency, because I had to start doing that in order to uh,
Mhm.
decide that we really needed to cover this as a podcast, I started hearing so many new terms, like
Mhm.
ICO, which I finally decided stands for initial coin offering, which maybe it's kind of like
Uh-huh.
an IPO,
It
except
is.
for
Uh-huh.
it's for coins. And
Exactly.
then there's I think you might pronounce it HODL, HODL, which apparently stands for hold on for dear life, uh,
Yes.
which I'm thinking might be, you're going to invest in it and hope that it goes up.
Yes, hold on for dear life. Yeah, I like that one. I hadn't
Right.
I hadn't seen that one as
Okay.
well. But I think you probably, as people start to do a little more research, there's what they call actual coins, then there's tokens.
Hmm.
You people probably heard of NFTs, which is non-fungible
Hmm.
tokens, where you're actually investing in somebody's intellectual property. It could be, let's say, Michael Jordan's basketball shoes from his playoff,
Hmm.
his championship, and you're buying into that, what you call non-fungible token.
Hmm.
So, you have things like that are out there as well, or somebody who's, producing their artwork. Um, and you're not buying the actual piece, but you're buying kind of shares or the non-fungible tokens into a certain um, um, basically a certain asset, which would be, let's say that painting. You're not buying the actual painting, you're buying into the
You're buying
shares
into
or
a
the
share of
tokens intact.
ownerships.
Yeah.
Right.
on that. So there's so much out there in this space, but when you start learning about it, know the difference between, what the coins are, what the tokens are. There's first, second, third level layer
Mhm.
blockchain and how they all work as well. But just kind of a primer. I would probably go to Investopedia, has a really good primer on cryptocurrency. And then probably the Wall Street Journal, if you get a subscription to it, they have some really good information on cryptocurrency as well.
Okay. And then, of course, there's the one that we have heard of before cryptocurrency, which is the concept called pump and dump,
Yes.
which refers to a scammy practice of artificially inflating the value of a coin or a stock with the plan of then offloading it for a profit. And that's certainly not a situation that any of us want to be
We don't
caught
want
up
to,
into.
yeah, we don't want to be caught up into that. And I think that's what a lot happened with Dogecoin, is that there was a lot of, pump and dump situation, especially I think over the last 3 weeks. You probably saw it, go from 10 cents to now it's $4, and now it's back down. And so a lot of that was overinflated. Most people probably heard about that whole, GameStop on Reddit. So you get a lot of people who are artificially manipulating the investments in order to get gains. And then, like I said, do the pump and dump situation. Those aren't, investor. That's not the type of investor you want to be. You want to make sure that you have a solid strategy, why you're investing in certain things. Do not just invest in things that are hyped up. Have a solid investment strategy for what do you want to invest in and what it's for. We talk a lot about retirement, of course, and on our podcast. And if most people are investing for, retirement, this would not be the space that you're looking at for that. This is more of the speculative. If you make some money off of it, great. If you don't, then you had some fun in the investment, but do not look at it as an investment strategy where you're going to use it for retirement or educating your kids and all of those sort of things.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions that we've received. Is there anything else that I'm thinking back to one of our calls 2 or 3 months ago where you were talking about, I think, the stock market, and you were talking about that if you've bought a stock and it has suddenly precipitously fallen, you told me something that I hadn't really thought of, which is that unless I'm actually going to sell it at that deflated price, I haven't actually taken a loss, because there's a chance, if I keep holding it, that that it will recover from the precipitous fall. And maybe that's where that hodl comes from. Maybe hodl is hold on till it comes back again.
That's where the hodl will fall in. And that philosophy does hold true. And for traditional investments, I would probably say, because of the deregulation part of cryptocurrency, it doesn't operate the same way as mutual
because
funds,
we don't have any of the regulations.
Yeah, we don't have any of it, and we're not sure, because with mutual funds and ETFs and all of those, they usually have what they call, stop losses and embedded into, the exchange that will, and you've probably seen days where, the Dow was down, quite significant, and then they would stop trading because of that. So they'll have those stop measures built into the system. Not with cryptocurrency, because it's just not regulated. So I wouldn't say, this is one of those panic situations where you want to dump all of it now. I've read so many things over the past couple of weeks that people are, hey, get rid of your Bitcoin. And then there's others who say, hey, hold on, now you may be able to buy it at a little bit cheaper. So there's so much back and forth on how people are viewing it as well. But with any investment, know your risk tolerance, and know kind of the margins that, how much risk you want to take, and then that downside. So if the portfolio is down 20% or 24% or whatever, and that's kind of your range,
Mhm.
then and you can't sleep at night, and then you may want to take a look at maybe divesting of some of it, just to kind of, so you're not on this roller coaster ride and losing your stomach every
Right.
2 seconds on that. But that's with any investment, know what those measures are before you get into them. So you know when to pull the trigger, when to hold on, when to hold basically, and then what you need to do, and make sure you're not very emotional about it. If you have them built into that, when it hits that trigger, boom, you know what to do from there. So that's what I would recommend if you're going to get in any investment. Know where your limits are, know what your risk tolerance are, and then don't be emotional about it. Just pull the trigger when you need to.
All right. Well, as usual, you've been very informative, and so I appreciate this opportunity to get some education by talking to you. Thank you for another great Zoom call and for providing us with this excellent advice on why we might or might not have an interest in learning more about cryptocurrency, or potential interest in deciding that we want to be wild and crazy and invest in it. Um,
Mhm.
I want to remind our listeners that we do have these talks once a month. So unless something, like today we're talking on
Yeah.
Wednesday instead of Thursday, unless something changes in your and my schedules, we would normally have our next call on Thursday, the 24th of June at the
Mhm.
same time.
Yep.
And it will be another Zoom call. And I don't think you and I have decided yet what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I think we just kind of look at the headlines and see what people are
Right.
talking about,
Yes.
and go for it. And I know this was one of the ones we had toyed around with for quite some time, but it kept coming up in,
Mhm.
of course, on the headlines and questions that I've actually received as well, with through clients, or just through in passing. So I think it was one of those things we probably needed to address
Mhm.
sooner rather than later.
Well, I'm glad that we did, and to John, who might be listening to this call, my friend John from grad school. See, we did not tell anybody to buy it. We just
Yes,
explained it.
yes.
So, all right. Now, speaking to our listeners, thanks to you as well for joining us for this great call with Pamela Sams. If you have any questions about cryptocurrency after the call, um, I think Pam would be willing to answer
Uh-huh.
the questions.
Yeah.
Her email is Pamela@jacksonsams.com. That's JACKSONSAMS. And she doesn't spell Pamela any strange way. It's straightforward PAMELA. Or you can go to her website at www.jacksonsams.com. And if you'd like to know more about the National Association of Baby Boomer Women, check out our website at nabbw.com. We have a forum at Boomer Women Speak and a Facebook page at facebook.com/NABBW. And at that Facebook page, I have been posting articles on cryptocurrency that I have discovered.
Mhm.
I always tell the source and the author of them because they're not generated by me. I have no value capable knowledge on this, but I do think, just like when COVID first came and we started trying to keep people up to date with what was going on with COVID,
Mhm.
it's a current topic, and therefore I think of interest to our audience, and therefore I try to post articles at the facebook.com/NBBW for people who might want to see what I've found, and hopefully all of those comments, those articles, when I post them, they're there because I'm looking to generate some discussions. So
Mhm.
anybody who goes and reads the articles, feel free to make comments about them. Um, and as the last thing I want to say is, as we said at the beginning, it's the White House, according to the Washington Post today, is trying to look at cryptocurrency, what they call guardrails that will allow investors to, as they put it, Dogecoin to their heart's content. So maybe
Yes.
maybe at that point it will get to be a point where it's um, got regulations and rules, and it's not such a wild west speculative
Yes.
situation.
Yes. And I think investors always, it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. Who knows? With when regulation comes in. But one other thing I know, the IRS is also closely looking at this, if you probably looked at, if you did your taxes this year, paper version or otherwise, you probably saw a question about cryptocurrency on the returns this year, because IRS knows people are doing investing in it, and they're making quite a bit. I believe you have to report over 10,000 of gains or something like that. So the IRS are they're getting in on the game too. So if you're making money through cryptocurrency, the IRS wants a little piece of the pie too.
Exactly. And there was a piece of news about that today that I also found. It's from a source called PR Newswire, which for PR for Public Relations Newswire. They said that cryptocurrency has a case filed against the IRS because the IRS, as you said, is trying to see about if they can tax you. And the concept is what the PR Newswire source is saying is that it's really not a profit or loss until you sell it. So and if you have just acquired it and you haven't sold it or dispensed of it in some way, the IRS should keep its mitts off of it. But the IRS is always trying to be creative.
Exactly. But then just in the studies of the cryptocurrency and digital assets, it's a category situation. So I know when I was looking at the digital assets, do you classify it as a currency, or do you classify it as a security? If you classify it as a security, then the regulations work in that realm, and then that's where it becomes kind of the IRS situation where they can tax on any gains or any sales or things like that. So yeah, that's going to be all part of that either regulation or how they're going to signify what digital assets category. So be on the lookout for a lot of different news articles, and as you start reading about digital currency, how it's going to operate in which realm, if it's going to be more of an investment realm versus, let's say, a currency like a fiat currency situation. It works under different rules and regulations. So we have to kind of see what's going to come down the pike in that aspect.
Do you think that there will be a situation ever that this just occurred to me? So I'm sorry to ask that right at the end, but speaking of fiat currencies, do you think there'll be a situation where the various governments around the world will start to say, we don't want to have have competition? This is, will there be a pushback by fiat currency to say, let's not have this?
Let's not have it. Yeah, I'm sure, there will definitely be some debate on that. Like I said, the talks have been, China moving their yen, their yuan to a digital currency. So, with that, and then there's a number of players who move into that space, definitely has to be some economic dialogue on how do we deal with that from across different global situations from there.
All right. Well, I don't have any more questions. I don't see any more questions that have come in. So unless you have one last word that you'd like to say, I guess we could end our call.
Yeah, I think we've handled the conversation with kid gloves to make sure that we give an overview of it. And like I said, as an advisor, it's all about information. Any particular situation that people need for investment recommendations, feel free to talk to me offline about. But this is definitely not a yes or no situation. Every individual investor has to evaluate that for themselves as well.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for your time and your information, Pam. I appreciate it. And we'll have another call in a month.
Okay.
All
Great.
Right.
Take care.
Good night.
All right. Good night.